Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of Album Analysis, where we'll be talking about Queen's 1991 album Innuendo. I apologize for the delay between episodes, but just like John Deacon in Bohemian Rhapsody, I had a cold last week. So, I wanted to start by setting the scene with this album because, similarly to the last album we talked about, Nightmare, this album was very much an album of the time in which it was written. At this point, Queen had finished 1989's The Miracle. They had stopped touring, and while with The Miracle, they were back together, kind of re-energized, and were kind of looking to the future, but thinking it might be their last album. By the time Innuendo rolled around, things were pretty bad with Freddie Mercury's health, so they kind of knew it was going to be the last album, and they were kind of racing against the clock to get it done to a certain extent. It ended up coming out a little later than they had intended. They were trying to get it out in late 1990. It ended up coming out in February 1991. So just to, in case anyone's not familiar with Queen, I feel like I should just kind of say who's in the band. So basically, I mean, like I said, Freddie Mercury, a vocalist, he does keyboards, he writes a lot of the songs. Guitarist is Brian May. He also writes a lot of the songs. He's also an astrophysicist. He has a lot of interesting pursuits, and he's a very varied individual. The bassist is John Deacon. He also writes some stuff, not as much as Brian and Freddie, but he writes a fair amount of stuff. His stuff tends to be a little different than the first two. He has his own style. And then lastly, Roger Taylor, the drummer. He writes a lot of stuff. You'll see some stuff from him on this album, and both Brian and Roger sometimes take over vocal duties on some of the other albums, not so much on this album. It's very, Freddie does most of the vocals. So basically, 1990, they went into the studio and they were going to record Innuendo. There was a lot of press pressure regarding Freddie's illness because he hadn't really talked publicly about what was going on with him. So there's a lot of things going on when they went to Montreux to record this album. However, despite all of this, you would think this would be a really somber, depressing album, and it really isn't. It's especially in Freddie's stuff, it's a really fun album. So let's get into it by track and look at some of the themes and kind of what's going on with Innuendo. So the first song on the album is also the titular track, Innuendo, and this song was written by Roger and Freddie together. Roger wrote most of the song, which has this kind of theme of sort of looking out and asking a lot of the big questions and still striving against kind of the inevitable. That's Roger's part. Freddie's part is very different because in the middle of the song it suddenly goes into a flamenco guitar, which is played by Steve Howe from Yes, one of the only non-Queen musicians to play on a Queen record. And then Freddie has this weird kind of like almost ballet-ish part where he's singing about that you can be anything you want to be, and then it kind of goes back into Roger's part where he's asking God like why we exist and all these kind of big questions. So when this song sets up very much a theme lyrically of the album in which the other guys in the band are writing about Freddie's illness and kind of the questions that they have regarding like whether the band is going to be able to go on and what they're going to do and like why it's all happening. Whereas Freddie's not really writing about his illness, with a few exceptions here and there. He's kind of giving advice almost, because most of Freddie's lyrics on this album are all in second person. Like throughout Innuendo, his part is that you can be anything you want to be, and it's all like advice. However, not always, because we move into song number 2, which is called I'm Going Slightly Mad. This song was written by Freddie with a co-writer, uncredited role from his friend Peter Stricker, And this song is basically just a lot of metaphors about somebody with mental illness, but in a humorous light. It's kind of, they go from, I'm knitting with only one needle, I'm driving only 3 wheels, and it's these kind of progressive different things of these metaphors of like going crazy. And now there's a lot of questionable interpretation of this song, and I'm gonna put out mine out there, and I could be wrong because this might have been contradicted by somebody who knows Freddie personally, but a lot of people assume that this song is about Freddie being concerned about AIDS-related dementia, and that interpretation is out there so much that you will see. I'm going slightly mad. It's about AIDS-related dementia. But now, again, I might be contradicted because if Jim Hutton's book, which I haven't yet read, says that it is, then Jim Hutton, who was Freddie's husband, would know because, you know, he's Freddie's husband and Freddie probably told him what the song was about. But it seems like, as far as I can gather, people are attributing that interpretation to Peter Straker, the uncredited co-writer. But Peter Straker has also said that Freddie didn't tell him what his illness was, so he wouldn't have had a conversation about it being about that. So that, it seems like it's more just a humorous song of, it's also been said that Freddie was trying to write just kind of like a witty song with a lot of different quips in it. And so according to, I believe, Jim Hutton, Freddie and Peter just started trying to one-up each other with like trying to go with more and more outrageous lines. Like, oh, I've got this one, and I've got this one, and kind of trying to one-up each other. So it leads to this really, really funny song. And there was a video that was also made for this, which has Freddie in this crazy wig, and I think Roger is driving around on a tricycle. There's, I think, Elton John dressed up as a gorilla. It's a really crazy video. There's bananas everywhere. It's really campy and really fun, and so kind of showing that even though this is an album with a lot of serious things were going on, that Freddie still definitely had his sense of humor intact. And also there's a line in here that, keep this in mind because we're going to go back to it in a little bit, but there's a line about, I'm not my usual top billing, and keep an eye on that because we're going to come back to that, because the idea of shows is definitely a theme in this album, so that's the first time we really get it. And it's going to come back in different lyricist songs throughout. So keep that in mind. The third song on the album is Headlong, which was written by Brian May, and this was a song that Brian May was going to use for his solo album. I think it was Back to the Light that it was going to be on, but then apparently he heard Freddie sing it, and he just liked how Freddie sang it so much that he was like, okay, it's going to be on the Queen album then. And Headlong is an interesting song because it's this sort of tale of two people falling in love and kind of the inevitability about it. And there is sort of a weird dark tinge because it's kind of almost this sort of idea of sort of hitting the point in your life where you're going to settle down and get married because you found the one, but that you can't do anything about it because you're just kind of rushing into it. And so there is that, again, sort of theme of inevitability that's going on in that song. I will admit, the first couple times I heard Headlong, I didn't like it, and I don't entirely know why. But then one day, I was on a bus going to this big mall that's in my area, and Headlong came on as the bus was, you know, driving down this interstate. And then it just became the perfect driving song, and then I fell in love with Headlong. So Headlong is a song that it took me a little while to fully appreciate, but listen to Headlong on a bus and you will be glad that you did. And they made a video for this one too. This was the first or second video that they made, because they made a video for Innuendo, but it was all animated, so it didn't actually feature the members of the band in the actual video. But Headlong it was filmed in late 1990, and Freddie's got this blue tie and also this big orange, like yellow sweater, and they're sitting on shelves for some reason. And it's just kind of a fun video, and it's the last video where Freddie really looks like he's really himself, and he's really energetic, and he looks pretty good in that one. So he looks very into it, and he just very enthusiastic, and so it's a fun song. You can kind of see why Brian was so excited when he heard Freddie sing it, because Freddie just has this enthusiasm with it. There is a demo version with Brian May singing it, which sounds pretty interesting too. So if Brian ever does a version of it, that'd be really interesting to hear. But I am kind of glad that it ended up on this album. And so again, we have the idea of inevitability, that you can't do anything about the future, you can just run headlong into it. After Headlong, we continue with another Brian May song, I Can't Live With You, which is another song that Brian had written intending to put it on his solo album. But the other members of the band really enjoyed the song, so it ended up on Innuendo again. And there's two different versions of this song. There's one that's more of a rock version that you can get on the deluxe versions of Innuendo, but this is more of a poppy sort of song. It's very catchy, and at its core, it's just a song about being in love with somebody, but you always are arguing with them. But then at the end, there's kind of a turn, and especially in the songs that Brian writes on this album, there's a lot of turns at the end, because throughout it's this person saying that they can't live with the other person, that they're always fighting, that they, probably should break up. But then at the end, he says that he's in love with the other person, and basically he's gonna stick with them regardless, and that they're in love. So in a way, you could also see that maybe he's also talking to an extent about the other band members who, I mean, if you've seen Bohemian Rhapsody, that's probably a pretty accurate thing of them quibbling in the studio and fighting over whose song is going to be on which single, and who's going to do with who, and whose chord wasn't right, but they stayed together for 20 years and would probably still be together today if, unfortunately, Freddie hadn't passed away. So in a way, you gotta wonder if maybe Brian is talking to the other guys in the band and saying that even though they fight all the time, that at the end of the day, they really are a cohesive unit who really cares about each other, and that they're going to stick by each other even with these other pressures from the outside coming in. After I Can't Live With You, we come back to Freddie. And remember how I said that all of Freddie's songs are in the second person, except for I'm Going Slightly Mad, or at least a lot of them are? This song is the crowning example of this, and this, I have to say, is possibly my favorite Queen song. This is a song called Don't Try So Hard, and this song is so beautiful. And most of it is just Freddie giving advice to somebody in the second person, telling them to kind of let it all go and just enjoy the simple things in life, which is really another theme of this album. It's about the simple things in life, and being in a relationship with someone who you care about, going basically like to the supermarket like they're talking about in Headlong, and just living life with other people. And that's a theme that also goes throughout this album, and this song really describes it really well. The only part of the song that is in the first person is this part where Freddie sings, "Oh, what a beautiful world, this is the life for me. Oh, what a beautiful world, it's a simple life for me." And that's the part that seemed to be written last, because there is a demo version of Don't Try So Hard that doesn't have that first person part in it. It's just all the second person parts. And so I wonder if maybe at the end Freddie said, let's put a little bit of myself more in this song. And it really ties the song together. And maybe it's advice to other people, maybe it's advice to the fans, maybe it's advice to himself, because Freddie was always a very get up and go person. Like, you see, that energy is always on stage, and then after he got sick, he kind of had to take it down a notch and maybe have to tell himself not to try so hard and just to do what he could do at any given time. And that's something that, you know, regardless of whether someone is sick or injured or just going through a point in their life or just getting older, eventually people kind of have to sit down and say, I can't maybe do all the stuff that I used to do. I can't do everything at once. And constantly trying to do everything at once can bring people a lot of anxiety. So I think that it really is good advice that Freddie is giving us all and saying to kind of take a step back, to enjoy the world around us, to not try to keep constantly one-upping yourself if you're just going to turn it back on yourself and then feel inferior. So from a psychology point of view, I think very sound advice from Mr. Freddie Mercury. So thank you for that. After Don't Try So Hard, we hear from Roger Taylor again, and this song is called Ride the Wild Wind, and it includes Roger has competing vocals with Freddie on the chorus, and Roger has said that this song was sort of a follow-up to his song on A Night at the Opera, I'm in Love with My Car, which if you've seen Bohemian Rhapsody or talked to a lot of Queen fans, I'm in Love with My Car is just this ongoing in-joke with Queen fans. It's actually a really good song, but it's kind of a weird song, so everyone sort of pokes fun at I'm in Love with My Car because it's about a guy who's in love with his car. But Roger has said that this song is sort of a follow-up, and you could kind of maybe call it I'm in Love with My Motorcycle, because it's about this guy who he's trying to convince this girl maybe or somebody else to jump on a motorcycle, it seems, with him and just like ride the wild wind, that engage in some dangerous sports and just kind of live life to the fullest, which again goes back to the theme of simple pleasures. Riding your motorcycle around is not something that really costs a lot of money if you've already got a motorcycle, and you can just kind of in spending that time with someone who you care about, as the narrator seems to. It's just something that he seems to enjoy, and it's also interesting to hear Freddie sing this song because he really does imbue a lot of that energy with it. And when you know that at the time he was going through a lot of health issues, the fact that, you know, he's got this, he's singing about these dangerous sports and riding the wild wind and kind of forgetting, like throwing danger to the wind, it's kind of an interesting contrast. But he does it really well. And I like the competing vocal between him and Roger on the chorus. There's a demo version of this with Roger Taylor just singing it, which sounds really interesting too. So I'm not sure if Roger ever tackled it on any of his solo efforts or with the Cross, but it will be interesting to hear a full version with Roger and see how he takes it on differently. So I'm very glad that Roger decided to follow up I'm in Love with My Car with some more extreme sporting and motorbiking pursuits from Mr. Roger Taylor. After Ride the Wild Wind, we are back to Freddie with All God's People. And All God's People was a song that was originally written for Freddie's Barcelona album, which was a duet album he did with opera singer Montserrat Caballé, and I probably pronounced that wrong, I'm so sorry. But it was originally a song called Africa by Night, and then it was reworked into All God's People with a co-writing credit with Mike Moran. And this song kind of sounds like Freddie was sitting in the middle of the Innuendo sessions, and he just got up and decided to go lead a Baptist church service, and they let him, I guess. And so this is he really took the whole gospel theme that he had used in Somebody to Love, and then, you know, we see later in Let Me Live, and he really cranked it up to 11 with All God's People, and there's all kinds of different parts going on, and there's just a lot of stuff happening in this song. it's kind of a weird song, but it's interesting, and it does also still tie into a lot of the themes, because religion is also something that is a thing that people generally use to bring a lot of happiness and importance to their lives. And it's, again, like riding your motorcycle or enjoying the world around you. It's not something that costs money, it's just something that's within yourself. So I think that was something that maybe Freddie was consciously trying to tie in there. And he's done odes to different religious themes in the past too. When we get to the jazz album, we'll talk a little bit more about that. But he definitely is influenced by gospel, by just different themes, and it seemed like Freddie always really liked that kind of music, and he generally tended to go back to it periodically throughout his career. After All God's People, we go into These Are the Days of Our Lives, which was written by drummer Roger Taylor again. And this song is definitely one of the songs where, as I said, Freddie wasn't really writing about his illness, but the other band members were. And this song is kind of almost like Roger Taylor's reflection on getting older and Freddie being sick and the uncertainty of life, and kind of realizing that you're at a different point in your life. And it's about looking back on your past and then looking into the future, and similarly to Don't Try So Hard, having to change what you're doing, because Roger writes that in the past you could just kind of be careless and live life to the fullest and you didn't have to worry about the future. But then now, he says, you could lay back and enjoy it with your kids. So you're kind of looking at the new generation, realizing that they're the future and that you're in a different stage of your life. So it's a very stirring song, and These Are the Days of Our Lives was the last music video by Queen that featured Freddie Mercury in it. And he was pretty sick by the time that they recorded that video. I believe it was in May 91. And he had a cat vest with all of his cats on it, and they filmed it in black and white. They also filmed I'm Going Slightly Mad in black and white, because just due to Freddie's illness and kind of trying to shoot around it. But despite that, it's a really good music video, and it definitely kind of ties together all of Queen's legacy and the fact that the band members are still standing behind Freddie, that Freddie's still out there doing it as long as he can. And at the end of the song and the video, Freddie just doesn't sing but just says, "I still love you," and a lot of people feel like that's the last message to the fans, that he still loves us. And I'm glad he does, because this beautiful album came out of it. And so this song really means a lot to Queen fans. And I saw there was a clip of Roger singing lead on These Are the Days during, I think it must have been either a Queen concert or it might have been Roger Taylor solo thing. And at the part where he says, "I still love you," he, instead of saying "I still love you," he says, "I look and I find," and then he gestures out and he goes, "Brian May," and Brian May comes over, and they're just kind of this, so they're still, Queen's still together in its own new version of it. These guys are still really good friends, they still really care about each other, and so that's kind of the long life of this song, that even over 30 years it can mean so many different things in so many different contexts. So These Are the Days of Our Lives is a really good song, really meaningful song in the Queen canon. So it's a kind of eternal. After These Are the Days, we come back to Freddie, and the next song is called Delilah. This song is a song that Freddie wrote for his favorite cat, his calico cat Delilah, who he decided to write a song about. And the song at first, if you're not familiar with Queen, sounds like he's singing about a girl. up until the point that he says that the person he's writing about makes him slightly mad when she pees all over his Chippendale suite. At which point most people realize that he's not singing about a person, he's singing about a cat. There's also a lot of meowing for those who, didn't get the reference earlier. This is a song that was kind of Freddie's pet project, to coin a phrase, and Roger Taylor didn't like the song. Brian May was a little less than thrilled, it seemed, because he said something about not liking to use the talk box, but how was he going to make meowing noises on his guitar. And I don't know if John Deacon was on board for this song, but it seemed like it was kind of Freddie's own little thing that he wanted to do. It's kind of funny because if you think back to like Roger with I'm in Love with My Car, where he was such a big fan of that song, and kind of the other people in the band just went like, no. So this is kind of Freddie's I'm in love with my car, but he's like, I'm gonna write a song about my cat, and they're like, oh, okay. But it does, even though it's kind of randomly a song about Freddie's cat, it does still tie in with the themes of the album about simple pleasures, because spending time with your pet is definitely a simple pleasure, and it sounds like Freddie has kind of gone from the big anthems that kind of taking over the world. Think about Princes of the Universe, where it's like, I'm immortal, I'm going to take over everything, and nobody can stand up to me, to sort of looking back only 5 years later and kind of being like, I just want to hang out with my cat, and just, I'm going to take it down a notch. So he definitely, with this song, he's kind of, again, he's sort of talking about what's going on without talking about it. It's not straight out that, oh, I'm dealing with this, I have these health problems, I'm just kind of considering this. It's just, I'm going to write a song about my cat, and how important she is to me, and how much I love spending time with her. So I think, even though Delilah on its face is kind of a silly little song with weird meowing and talkbox meowing and all that kind of stuff, it does have also a serious subtext when you consider it within the realm of the rest of the album. But it's a fun little song. Everyone loves Delilah, except for Roger Taylor. Speaking of fun songs, the next song we have up is called The Hitman. And The Hitman is a song that was written by Freddie initially, and then Brian came in and sort of reworked it. And they made this kind of really fun, hard rocky song that's almost kind of metal-ish. And it's using someone being a hitman as a metaphor for falling in love with somebody. It's just a really fun song, and Freddie sounds so energetic on it, and he's just really having a good time. And I don't know that you can really look really deep into the Hitman. It's just a fun song, and it's just kind of a good rocker. And one interesting lyric in there is there's a part where Freddie sings, I've been to the Hitman school. And if you remember back when Freddie sang Good Old Fashioned Lover Boy, he said that he learned his passion at the good old fashioned school of lover boys, which proves that grad school can be a rough time for people. You start off at the school of lover boys, and then you end up at the Hitman school for grad school. It's a dark time. And so the Hitman is just kind of a rocker. Lyrically, it's just a person singing about how they're going to do anything for the person that they care about, including killing a bunch of people. That's the Hitman. After the Hitman is Bijou, which is a mostly instrumental song with only a small vocal and lyrical part. And I think this was Brian. It's a good song. It's about two people being destined to be together, and kind of goes back to the theme of inevitability. And that is Bijou. And then we have our finale song, which is probably the song that you all want me to talk about, so I'm gonna do it because I try to give the people what they want. The last song on this album is called The Show Must Go On, and this is the song that everybody knows off of this album, and it's for a reason. And so first I just want to go back and notice something that I didn't mention during These Are the Days of Our Lives, but there's a lyric that Roger has there where he says, "The rest of my life's been just a show." So if we remember back to I'm Going Slightly Mad, he says that he's not his usual top billing. In These Are the Days of Our Lives, we have "The rest of my life's been just a show," and we end with "The show must go on." Do you guys see the show theme? I do. So with "The show must go on," let's look at it in two different contexts, because we know what was going on with Freddie at this time. But a common misconception, Freddie did not write "The Show Must Go On." Brian May wrote it, and he consulted with Freddie for the first verse, and they kind of wrote the first verse together, but primarily this was a Brian May song. And there's somewhere in the world there's a demo version with Brian May, but I haven't heard it. I don't know if it's available. And apparently when Brian wrote it, he didn't think that Freddie was going to be physically able to hit the notes, and he slammed a shot of vodka and just nailed it in one take. So there we go. And so with "The Show Must Go On," let's look at it lyrically for a second and ignore the greater context that we all know about, that this was a song about Freddie's illness. If we look at just the structure of the lyrics, it has a lot in common with a Freddie composition from 1984's The Works, "It's a Hard Life." In "It's a Hard Life," at first, the narrator is saying he doesn't want to go on because he's broken up with the person he cares about. He's just done with life. Then in the second verse, he's kind of saying, okay, I'm waiting around to see if love is going to find me, but I'm still kind of uncertain about it. And then at the end, he says, it is a hard life, but I'm going to still live for love. "Show Must Go On" has this very similar structure. In the first verse, we have our narrator, let's say Freddie, because Brian wrote it for Freddie. Freddie is saying he doesn't know what's going on, he's questioning what's going on in his life, all this tragedy is around him, he doesn't know what he's going to do. In the second verse, he's kind of waiting in the wings. He's questioning, but he's literally turning a corner, and he's kind of making that decision about, well, maybe I'll still go on, but I'm still questioning it. Just like he's questioning whether he still wants to go back into the love game again in "It's a Hard Life." By the end of "Show Must Go On," the bridge, he's devoted to it, and he really is saying, "The show must go on, I'm going to do it." And he says, "I'll top the bill." So he's progressed from where he wasn't his usual top billing to he's right back up there with "The Show Must Go On." So that's just kind of structurally what's going on with the song. Obviously, we all know that this song was very much in the context of Freddie's illness, that he was fighting against not only being sick, but all this press upheaval where people were literally waiting outside his house to try to hound him about, whether he was sick or not. They were taking pictures of him at events and almost pretty much making him look worse in the pictures, and just all this upheaval, and he's still just trying to record and make music because that's what he wants to do. So that's really much a lot of what "The Show Must Go On" is about. It's kind of taking all this other stuff and just pushing it to the side, because at the end of the day, the show must go on. In preparation for this episode, I was actually just reading on TV Tropes. They had the trope website for "The Show Must Go On," the phrase. And this is a phrase that initially showed up in, I think, the 1800s, and the idea is that when you're in live theater, the show must go on, no matter if there's, props falling, if there's the winds howling, if somebody's sick, if somebody forgets their lines, you just have to keep going. Whereas if you're in, say, a TV show or a movie, you can roll and you can cut and you can just kind of come back to it later if you messed up. Not so in musical theater or, you know, in live theater, you just have to keep going. So if somebody forgets their lines, if the music doesn't come on, you just have to keep going. And so that's really what Brian and his lyrics is conjuring up here. He's saying that ultimately you can't choose what the future is. You just have to get out on stage and just do it. And that's pretty much kind of what Freddie said when he said he was going to sing the song and then nailed it in one take. He didn't stop. He just went and did it. And it turned out really, really well, obviously. And so that's really kind of the message of that song and really of the whole album. There's the idea of focusing on what's really important and ignoring things, you know, like in this case it will be the press and all the speculation and all the upheaval that was going on in, you know, some of their personal lives, the band trying to keep Freddie's illness a secret. All of that stuff being tossed out the window and just focusing on what's important. And ultimately what's important in this album is the music. And the music works really well. This is why this probably is my favorite Queen album, potentially tied with A Night at the Opera, which is also really spectacular. They tossed out all the junk and just focused on the music. And it worked really, really well. It's a really inspiring album. And it's a really fun album, despite the somber circumstances. It's just an album you can put on and you can really enjoy, no matter at what point in your life you're at, no matter what's going on for you. Everyone can find a song that they can relate to on this album. So overall, I can't recommend this album enough. Especially if you're a new Queen fan, I would say maybe start with this over Made in Heaven, because Made in Heaven is kind of an unusual album in that it wasn't really made in the way that Queen usually record their albums. If you're new to the band, I would definitely recommend checking this out. It's a good place to start. It's a very cohesive album from start to finish, and I think that if you're thinking about getting into some Queen and you don't really know what to start, Innuendo is a pretty solid place to start. Now, I do also want to just give a little preview for my next album that I'm going to tackle, which is going to be Slipknot's self-titled album, which is Slipknot. And we're going to talk about that, and to try to tie some of our things together, I just want to point out that Corey Taylor from Slipknot was recently asked who he thought was the best frontman in all of rock, and he said that Freddie Mercury was. So, hey, you know, the talent recognizes talent, I guess. So that's Innuendo. Definitely check it out. It should be available at anywhere that you get your music. There's also a deluxe version, as I alluded to, that's available on Spotify, and I think there may be a CD version that includes those demos that I mentioned from Ride the Wild Wind and Headlong. And there's a B-side called Lost Opportunity, which is an acoustic song that Brian sang, so that's a good song too. And the Hitman demo that I don't think I alluded to, but there's also a Hitman demo where Brian is singing lead and Freddie is just yelling random stuff in the background like, "Bite the bullet, baby." That's available on YouTube if you're interested in checking out to see what some of the early stages for the Hitman sounded like. The demo for The Show Must Go On I haven't found yet. There is a version of it without synths. That's on YouTube, so definitely check that out too. And lastly, as always, definitely check out the Mercury Phoenix Trust, which is fighting AIDS worldwide. They have a YouTube channel, they have a Twitter. Follow Brian May on Twitter. He makes some really good posts. He's involved in a lot of really good causes. And definitely, hopefully, come back next week when we talk about Slipknot's self-titled album.